Welcome to a solo podcast. I am sitting in a car park overlooking the beach at Polzeth in Cornwall. It's a nice sunny day, just the beginning of September. And September's always, in my memory, been a good month. It's often quite sunny, although it does tend to get a bit cold in the mornings and the evenings. Polzeth has got quite a history for me because I used to visit here as a child because I lived in the northern part of Cornwall, not far away, in a place called Wadebridge, and we used to come here. And as the story goes, I actually took my first steps on the beach. Now, whether that's true or not, it's neither here nor there, but I certainly have an affinity with the beach, and I used to bring my kids here. We used to come on holiday, and they learned to surf here. As you can tell, it's a bit windy. I'm just going to shut the window a little bit so we don't get the prevailing wind. Alright, okay, there we go. That might be a little bit better. But I often sort of come here when I come down to visit my sister and brother, who still live in Wadebridge. I come down here and just walk on the beach, just to sort of, if you like, land myself, which is what I've just done today, and hopefully tomorrow I might be able to have a go at surfing. But I'm intrigued by places that you could find inspiration, and I've been thinking about the next project that I'm doing, which is another book, and so the book that I've just finished is just about to be printed. But as I realised, it takes such a long time to complete a book, and I've got an idea for one, and I just thought it would be good for me to sort of take myself off somewhere and spend a bit of time just writing, not to complete the thing necessarily, but certainly to get it underway. And of course, what better place to come than somewhere like Cornwall, and be able to spend a bit of time walking and also getting ideas down. So my process for this is to dictate ideas into a phone, and then I can just run it through various things, edit it, and it's a way for me to deal with this. Now, of course, if I'm walking, I can't write. I mean, if I'm sort of in a house which has a nice view, I might sit down and write things down and then dictate them. For me, that's how I find it easier to get into a flow. Now, for other people, it will be typing direct into a computer. I can't do that very well. I find that really difficult. So really, the idea behind this particular podcast is about finding your inspiration points, ways of working that you find useful. Also understanding that sometimes you have to change those ideas to shake things up a little bit. But it's taken me a long time to get to that point of discovering things that work, sort of optimum ways of working for myself, and sometimes these things have been found by listening to other people's ideas, but generally I find that the way I work is, I won't say it's peculiar to me, but it certainly doesn't match up with some of the other writers and stuff that I've sort of studied. So anyway, this part of Cornwall on the north coast has got some fabulous little places. Just up from here is Port Isaac, which is a lovely little fishing village. Well, it's not so much a fishing village now, it's obviously a holiday destination, but they still get boats coming in that have been fishing and stuff. If you go further up, you come to places like sort of Boscastle, Tintagel. Of course, there's the ruined castle in Tintagel, and all the sort of Arthurian stuff. So this place is absolutely steeped in folklore, and what I find slightly troubling, but of course unfortunately we can't escape this, I guess, unfortunately, is the amount of development. I shouldn't call it that, really. The amount of building that goes on, and the cost of housing down here is utterly incredible. And it wasn't always like this. I remember about 20 years ago realising that my little terraced cottage in Kent, if I'd sold it, I could buy a small farm. Okay, derelict, but it had a number of buildings, but it wasn't uninhabitable. The outbuildings were a bit derelict, but it was just pretty mind-boggling, really, that I could do that. Well, you certainly couldn't do that now. In fact, the house prices down here are probably on a par with the south and southeast of England, which are just ridiculous. That makes you sort of think, well, I don't know where we're going with all this. I can't see how people can keep up with this at all. We need to really, somebody needs to come up with better ideas. But anyway, the point about this is that creativity is one of the things that makes us human. Our ability to create, whether we think of that as art, because even creating buildings that are interesting designs and stuff like that is all part of creativity. It's what we do. It's what we do very well. But what I've noticed in the last few years in particular is how creativity seems to be drying up amongst people. It's like people really don't believe that they've got it in them to be able to create anything, or there's somebody else, that they've got to be some sort of expert to create music or create art. And that certainly wasn't the case when I was growing up. And everything is, people, I think, are more frightened of doing something radical now than they certainly were when I was growing up. So where this sort of takes me back to Cornwall is, I'm obviously at an age where I can look back and see some of the things that people are worried about and realise actually, yes, particularly with my children, and their children, where they worry about things, and it's actually, well, that you don't really need to worry because it'll sort itself out type of thing because you've seen it all before, to the fact that I am actually worrying about certain things in the future that I don't think my kids do worry about, because I don't see where we're going to be a good place. It seems to be more restrictive than I can ever remember. Now, I know we go through phases. This might just literally be a phase that we're going through. Often in certainly in British social history, periods of time that were very repressive were often followed by times that were completely liberal. And of course, when you realise these things keep coming round and round in circles, maybe that's where we're going. I was talking to Tommy Kelly on what effectively would be the last podcast that went out, and we were talking about Stuart Wilde. Stuart was quite a radical sort of character, and a very successful writer of books in that sort of new age genre when that was a big seller. Stuart sold lots of books and made a lot of money, and he was really very successful doing talks and all the rest of it, and he was a bit of a celebrity. And then he sort of disappeared, and the idea of this program with Tommy was to look at that and sort of try to reassess what really should have been Stuart's legacy, because he has some great ideas, as good as any of those sort of thinkers of that period. And Tommy raised a point about, what happened? Was it that the new age sort of just died, and Stuart was just one of those that went with it, or was there something else? And I've got a feeling actually it's a little bit of both. So people have become, on the surface, quite literal, materialistic, quite nihilistic. The idea of, you've got to follow the science type of thing. But it's this thing that, following the science is almost like a doctrine. So that ability to think outside the box and think a little bit imaginatively, magically, that things could happen and things will turn up, which is that sort of Mr. Micawber, Dickensian thing of something will turn up. We seem to have lost that. And my God, you need that in order to become anything extraordinary, whether that's a musician, an artist, an athlete, a writer, because for all of those, somebody will turn around and say, forget it, mate, there's no chance. Statistically, you have no chance. Do you know how many people out there trying to do that? Blah, 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 blah. But the problem is, if you don't start, you're going to fail. Period. And we need to start. We need to believe. Which, again, brings me back to Polzeath Beach. For me, this is a sort of ritual. It's a bit of a pilgrimage. Not because I need to do anything amazing, but just walking on the sand and getting up to the water, and maybe going in the sea, walking around the rock pools that And they're the same rock pools. This is what amazes me. They are the same rock pools in the same places as they were probably from when I was a kid, but certainly from when my children were about, because they are exactly as I remember them when they were there. So that's 30 odd years ago. And it's, it's a sort of remembrance, and that has an extraordinary, powerful expression for me. That I'm going back to something like a sort of a source of something in myself. Now, I think we've all got that, and it could be, visiting the football ground of your favourite football team from when you were a kid. It could be going and visiting a house that you lived in, when you were a child, or it could be somewhere that, if you're a bit older, that your children, your children's first house. But it has that ability to change, to play with time, which in a way sort of mirrors that conversation that I had with Taylor Elwood in not the last episode, but the previous episode, where he was talking about space-time magic, where if we change our way and conception of time, sort of strange things start to happen, creatively. And we've got to remember that everything that we experience is actually inside our head, right? So when people say to you, oh, that's all in your head, that's all make-believe, and so you say, yes, it's inside my head, but you just don't realise how extraordinarily big my head is, that all of the universe is inside my head. Because again, whatever we experience as stimulus from outside, what that thing is that we're actually experiencing is nothing like we see it or feel it or hear it, which is a pretty mind-blowing thing. So within that is where this sort of creative art, the art, is going on. It's in our ability to restructure how we see and feel and experience and express the world around us in such a way that it inspires other people to feel the same way. And for us to do that, we've got to go to the source of that within ourselves, whether that is, as I said in my case, being on a beach in Cornwall, but it is that thing that I think we really need to do. Okay, until next time.